But it's getting cloudy out there. Yes, it is. How's everyone doing this evening? Waiting for some of you to join in because today we have this power-packed panel. We are going to be talking about so many different things, and this is going to be really the roundtable discussion in real terms. We have so many topics lined up for everybody, and we are going to touch base on literally every aspect of job search and networking. But our focus, our theme today is about building those strong relationships. You know, we've been talking about, I mean, the entire week I've been talking about positive thinking, but not just positive thinking action items, not just connecting with people, but building a relationship, not just reaching out to people for a reason, but to make sure that that reach is really means really gives value to the relationship that you're trying to build. We've talked about how to do the best interviews or interview skills. Today I want to talk about what not to do in an interview. And oh my God, the most important topic, which we've all been talking about. We've even done a couple of master classes, and still 70% of you show up to events and don't put your webcams on. So that visible presence, that virtual presence, that's so important. I know I might not be looking the greatest, but at least, hey, I have my webcam on and I am on live with you, talking to all of you. So welcome. I welcome all of you. I'm going to welcome our amazing panel in just a couple of seconds, but please know that this show is for you, is to answer the questions that you've been writing to me. And if you're not getting the opportunity to put the comments over here, please make sure that when you do watch the recorded version, you do put in those, or you send in those questions. So without further ado, let me bring all my guests online. Hi, Amdadur, how are you?
Good evening, I'm fine, thank you.
Good evening, good evening. Hi, Sayali. Hi, Biju.
Hello, everyone.
There you are.
Hey.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, everyone.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Really good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Some pockets of GTA had power outages. I hope we are okay here.
I think so. It's just a little cloudier than usual at this time of the evening, but so far so good.
Awesome, awesome.
How are you, Meena?
So let's get started. Oh, if I was any better, I'd be two of me.
Oh,
but then we don't have enough space on the screen, right?
there you go. Okay.
So let's get started. I'm really excited about today because we're going to be talking about so many different things. And I hope that we'll be able to cover it in this hour. But if not, we're always coming back, right? So, you know, let's start with, I think, one of the first topics that I'd like to start with this evening is around positive thinking and the negative side of positive thinking.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Biju, what did you mean by saying the negative side of positive thinking?
You know, it's interesting. So last week I was just reading through stuff and I came across this article where it actually said that. I was like, oh, that's fascinating. What is this positive thinking negative side? So there's, you know, I forget the name of the researcher. I'll maybe send out the link when I post something. So she did this, it's 20 years apparently of research that's gone into how people think about their future, right? So, and the research says that that the conventional wisdom is that you just kind of think about things positively, you have a good approach to, you know, what you want to do and how you want to do it, or you think about it, and then that just kind of magically happens. And you know, she did some experiments with people around different aspects of their life, and she found that the people who just thought about things positively actually didn't actually get to their goal. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I thought this was all about you just think about it and like, you kind of work through it. So, so the negative side of positive thinking, apparently, is that you get fooled by your brain that you've already achieved what you're going to achieve. Because you think about it. You think about a future that you want to have, and because you imagine it so much that you just kind of don't put in the effort, generally because you think it's already happening. So, so her suggestion is that don't do that. That you should always think about, and it's like a WOOP, WOOP. That's what she says, and that breaks down to wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. That you should think about everything that you do in those terms, which is you wish for something, whatever it may be in your life, then you imagine what the future looks like. And there's a connection to, as we talk to job seekers and so on, right? And then you also think about what would prevent you from getting there. Versus just, well, I want this and I wish it, and it'll just kind of magically happen. And then think about what plan you need to have to overcome those obstacles. So have what I've always talked about, be an optimist but a realist, which is you're optimistic about the future, but also real about what it is that you need to do to get there. So I was like, we may do it unconsciously, maybe, right? So I thought that was interesting because there's lots of times, and even for me, there are times I can relate to that. There are times you kind of think about stuff, you're like, oh, I'm already there. And then the research was fascinating, that she actually had two groups of men who wanted to lose weight. And she had one group imagine that they were already there, that was all they were going to do. And then she also had the other group of men imagine that they would actually be cheating as they went through the exercise, right? And the ones who thought they were already there actually lost less because they're like, well, I'm already there. I don't have to do much, because it apparently drains your energy when you think you've already achieved the goal that you want. So that was my thing. So I just thought that'd be interesting to talk about how everybody in the panel kind of deals with their own wishes, what have they done to kind of achieve them, and whether that story resonates with them or not. That's why I thought it was a good one to talk about.
There goes the theory of law of attraction, right? What do you guys have to say?
It's an interesting thought there, and comments there, Biju. For me, I think when you start thinking about positive stuff, it always puts your mind in the right set, the right mindset, and then you bring out those positive vibes unconsciously, right? And to your point, sometimes I think you're alluding to, sometimes people can get complacent, right? So they already think they've achieved it. So if you visualize an interview going really well, then you might over-rely and actually, I thought about it and I'm really positive it's going to go well, and you don't do as much as you should do. So I think there needs to be a balance, like anything in life, right?
Yeah.
Strike that good balance between, positive thinking. I think it's great to be able to have that feeling and that mindset that drives you to being less apprehensive and less anxious about stuff, but equally putting in the work and the shift to be able to go through the process and give a good account of yourself. So it was interesting when I read that topic that you wanted to talk about, the negative side of positive thinking. Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah.
So it's optimism, realism, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about Stephanie, Sayali? Goals. Like,
go on, Stephanie.
What's your best practice about achieving your goal that you wanted to? Right?
Yeah, I think as long as it doesn't just stay as a thought, but as a practice, then I think that's where our balance is. It's, we can, as you have even mentioned, Biju, we can have negative thinking about ourselves. We can overthink, and then it leads to us not achieving. We can also just stay in the thinking process and then not even leap into action. So I think, positive thinking is, a great mindset to have when you're going into something you need to plan, something you need to work towards and practice. But again, if you are stuck in practice and never go out and play the game, you're not going to win. So as long as, we're not just staying in the positive thinking. We're assessing around us, we're doing the research, and then when we go into these, job situations, we're putting our best foot forward because we've done the research. We're not just thinking our way through it without knowing what the company does, knowing what the role is. I mean, I think that's when it, as Amdadur mentioned, like that's when it becomes, again, the realism of, okay, we didn't just stay in the thinking part of it, we're actually now doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'd echo what Stephanie said, right? And what you said, Biju, positivity, but then being realistic as well. And I agree, it has to be positivity backed by action. So it's great if you have that positive outlook, optimism, you can visualize that. That's amazing, but it shouldn't be overpowering, right? It should complement each other, I'd say. You have your vision, you have your goals, your positive attitude, but then you should also make sure you're taking those steps and measures to actually execute it and work towards it.
Yeah, see, wish, outcome, obstacle, plan.
Yeah, I like that.
That's like the new thing.
I'm going to do another post on this, Biju.
Yeah, I'll send you guys the link. It's actually interesting read.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. So yes, so when there is no action, just positive thinking, not going to get anywhere. Which takes us to our next topic. Because it's about research, it's what not to do in an interview. That'll segue into Stephanie's next topic. So we've been talking about what to do in an interview. Let's talk about what not to do in an interview. As Stephanie's pointing out, what's the point for Steph? Is it for Biju?
It's Sayali's topic.
Yeah. I think there are so many conversations, right, about preparing for interviews, what we should do, but there's not a lot, at least it's not very common to discuss what we shouldn't be doing. I think we get so caught up in preparing ourselves that we don't stop to think, okay, maybe this isn't something I should bring up or something I should be doing. So I thought it would be good to sort of chat about that. Number one, I'd say never assume you have the job already. It's great to be confident. It's great to be, optimistic, like we just said, and it's great to project your interest, but there is a fine line, right? It's important not to go overboard. To give you an example, I have people going into interviews and they've asked about what are the work timings, and that's not too bad, but I actually had someone ask if parking is paid for. And I'm like, we don't have the job yet. You're worried about paid parking? Like, that's just premature, right? And again, we laugh about it now, but yeah, that person didn't end up getting the job, right? I don't know if it was for this or other factors. And again, I'm not saying something like this could cost you a job, but it could definitely stick with an employer, right? I mean, if you're doing other great things and this is the only faux pas, then you might be able to get away with it, but you don't want to take chances as a job seeker. So just be careful, be mindful. We don't want to seem too presumptuous. Any thoughts? Did you guys have any stories, any such experiences?
So I agree. Like if you go to the interview, you spend an hour, and when it comes to, do you have any questions? If that's like the top question, then you're like, I don't know. To your point, maybe it doesn't factor in of everything else, but there are times when you're just kind of on the borderline about things as you go. And I think it's also both ways, right? There's some things as an employer you just shouldn't ask.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that.
Yeah.
Right? Going in, like we have a habit of always having somebody else in the room. You should never do it alone, because it's not a good idea to do interviews alone. In general, just because you always have, one, you want diversity of questions, you want diversity of thought, but also just in general, you have other people in the conversation.
Absolutely. Right? And then this one may seem pretty obvious, but never talk ill of your current employer or past employers, right? You'd be surprised. It seems pretty obvious, but it does happen. Maybe we get carried away. You're settling into the interview, you're opening up. And yes, there can be factors in your current job with your current manager that are sort of prompting you to leave or look out elsewhere. But you might be a little politically correct, right? Maybe phrase it in a manner that's not directly talking ill of your current managers or past managers, because guess what? Your prospective employer is sitting there wondering if you're going to do the same thing to them, right? If I bring on this person, what is he going to say about me in his next role? So just, matter of being politically correct, being a little I won't say sugarcoating, but just being a little diplomatic about it is how I would put it.
And it says more about you sometimes, right, than anything else. So it's good to just steer away, stick to the topic.
Yeah, and you don't want to insert a note of negativity, right, into the proceeding. It's an interview. You're being assessed for your skills, for your personality. A lot of times, depending on what job you're doing, right, how do you connect with stakeholders? How do you connect with management? If those are important aspects of your job responsibilities, what impression are you going to be giving if you're sitting there and talking ill of your past managers, right? Like, the impression that you're conveying is either you don't know how to talk to your audience, or you're just not good with what you're communicating, how much information you're giving away. Like, all these are the giveaways, right, that can make or break an interview. So definitely you want to be careful about that.
Yeah, and that's something I picked out as a do not to do at an interview probably a couple of weeks ago, Meena. Can't remember now how long ago we did that session. But you're right. When somebody's interviewing you, they're not interviewing you just for your technical skills and your ability to do the job, but it's also about the fit. And if you're coming up and you're talking ill of somebody else, and you can be seen as somebody that could be causing some challenges to the wider team and the fit, then guess what? You're not going to be on the top of my list to get into the team, because I want a balanced team. I want a team that works well, gels well together, and delivers right outcomes while having a bit of fun if that's possible. So I fully support what you just said there.
Yep. And another one, again, these seem very obvious, but I still find that very common. We don't want to seem too eager. Like, yes, we want the job, we need the job, but you don't want to show up half an hour early to the interview. It just tells the employer you have nothing better to do than sit in their lobby, wait for them, right? I mean, yes, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes is fine. I always tell people, if you're early, go sit in the nearest Tim Hortons. Don't show yourself, right? Sit in your car or whatever. Don't show up so early. You just seem too eager, too desperate. And that's just one of those things. Throughout the interview process, there are so many touch points. You're emailing with the recruiter or HR to set up interviews. Again, there are little things throughout the process. Don't respond right away, like 1 minute after you have the email. You don't want to show a picture that, you're just waiting for their email to come through, right? Give it some time. And again, we don't want to wait too long. Give it a respectful amount of time, right, before you're getting back to them. You want to show engagement and interest. Just we don't want to show too much of it, if I may phrase it that way.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
I love that.
I have an interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Steph.
So just quickly, I love that behind the scenes look of how even small the industry is, and then speaking to, if you're showing up even early to an interview, or the impression you've made in an interview, because the industry is so small. There's instances where you may interview for 1 or 2 different positions over time in the same organization, maybe, and they can refer back. And sometimes in the application, they'll ask if you've interviewed with them previously. And sometimes that comes up, and they'll look back to what their records were, how you answered the questions there. So again, very important, the responses and the impressions you give the first time around, because they do stick and they write it down on paper, right?
Yeah. And on that point, Stephanie, right, a lot of people just focus on the interview from the moment of, entering the manager's office and leaving. But no, like I mentioned, there are so many touch points even prior to that, right? Your email scheduling, your phone conversation, entering the office. Of course, now everybody's remote, so I guess there are new avenues and challenges. But I had an incident where a person was rude to the receptionist. And guess what? That didn't go down well with the company. It was a small, mid-sized company. They all operated like one big family. And then this person shows up, and then something happened with the reception. I don't remember, but again, that stuck. I don't know what happened there, but that was definitely not well received. You don't want to give such impressions, right, when you're interviewing for a job you really want. So it's about these little things before even leading up to the interview. All these are touch points before you even walk into the manager's office, right? And then again, after your thank you note, as long as your conduct before you've exited the premises, all of these are important as well. So I guess it's just important to be mindful throughout the process.
Yeah, I shared this story before. I had a marketing professor who used to tell us that, before the interview, just make sure you wash your hands with really hot water, so that it feels good when you shake somebody's hand. The days when you can shake people's hand. I'm like, So all these like small tricks that people have. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but.
It's
Yeah.
an interesting tip. I did have a story to share though. What not to do in an interview. So I was hosting an interview for a senior project manager a while back, and we were talking about some of the projects that they had worked on, and he shared information in the interview saying, you asked for information, I'm not allowed to speak about it, but because we're in a closed room, I can share this confidential information. I don't see Lonnie's face going. Just to what the point Sayali was making, if you share negativity about your previous employer, what is to say you won't share negativity about your new employer? And that's the same thought process. We didn't select that person, even though that person was the best suited candidate, only because he shared confidential information.
I would think, I mean, if I can't trust you with confidential information, what can I trust you with?
Absolutely. Like lack of discretion, right? It's for high profile roles. Absolutely. That's a big red flag.
So let's move on. We talked about what not to do in an interview. Now, what to do really in an interview during these times. So talking about our presence, and we've got the queen of masterclass on visibility. So let's talk about our get camera ready queen.
Thanks, Nina, for that.
My posture is fine. I'm good.
And
See,
Steve,
we're all adjusting.
and that speaks to, before I even, chat about the topic, the storytelling comes in even before I start talking, right? We have a relationship where we can all joke and just share honest feedback here. And, for me, it's all about storytelling and be authentic to yourself. Biju shared about the negative side of positive thinking, and Amdadur echoed my feelings as well on mindset, right? We have to be in a space where we are prepared, but we aren't psyching ourselves out or overthinking, so that we don't end up putting our best foot forward. The best thing that we can do is know ourselves and know our story. And as Amina mentioned in Masterclass, I speak a lot about what we can do to slowly prepare to do a virtual interview and to be aware of our spacing and be aware of how we're presenting ourselves on camera. Of course, there are the technical elements such as lighting. Your face wants to be visible. Make sure you know what's in your frame and see what's visible behind you, that there's nothing behind you that you wouldn't want to be shown on camera. We're making sure that we're visible, that we're not blurry, that our eyes can be seen, our facial expressions, that we're engaging well in interviews. And it's not just about maybe a job interview that we're doing over camera. Like today we're doing an interview, we're doing a panel discussion on the last call with 5 people who are all having conversations where we're engaging with each other, we're nodding, we're laughing, and we're engaging in this verbal communication. But we also have these nonverbal cues, right? We have the body language. Biju's leaning in, listening to what I'm saying. We're paying attention to what the other person is saying. We're listening. We have eye contact, right? And these are things that we can apply in interviews in person, as well as when we're in virtual interviews. And so all of those things are things we need to be aware of. What are we actually seeing on camera? So that's the visual part of it. And really the other part is not just what you see, it's also what you hear, right? And I would argue that's almost more important because I can get over someone's screen being blurry, but it's harder to resonate with someone if you can't even hear the words they're saying. I mean, we listen to podcasts all the time that have no visual components, and yet we're engaged with it. We listen to the radio and we dance to our favorite song as we're driving down the highway. So I would always argue that what we say is almost more important than how we show it or display it. Of course, it's important when the only interaction that we have is virtual and we're not able to assess body language. As Sayali mentioned, and Biju, we can't do the handshake, we can't greet. We're not exiting the premise in the same way we are. We're now just exiting a meeting or platform. So now the only thing that I can make a first impression with is how you visually represent yourself on camera and the words that you're saying and the stories you're sharing. So as much as it's important to do that in person, it's even more amplified when we're doing it online. Do you guys have any thoughts to those points as well? Anything to add?
Yeah, very, very interesting. Very nicely put, Steph. And I would agree, like the audio is very, very much more important, right? Especially in today's times where people are working from home, there are kids, pets around us. That does pose a challenge, and it's one more thing to take care of as you go through your interview journey. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
No, I agree. I think what you say, I completely agree with the story. And I think it's harder than what maybe people think it is, but I think it's also just practice. I think the more you do it, the better your story gets. I think it forces you to think about what is the story that you want to tell, right? So that may be one of those positive, negative thinking things where you think, it's a story. Like,
I was waiting for Biju to say that.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm perfect. I got a story. I heard stories all the time. And you hear everybody talking about storytelling. You're like, I can do that. Then you actually start doing it and you're just like bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know.
And I'm suddenly very conscious of the ray of sun that's coming at me. It was cloudy before, guys. I prepped for that.
It's not a halo then, is it?
That's what it looks
not
like.
Not quite.
Yeah, Steph, I agree. And I think, it's sometimes when the words that you project and you talk about, I think it's absolutely important. And you referenced earlier on about the visual cues, the body language. When you switch on the camera, especially when you're delivering a presentation, it's outside the interview process. But if you're delivering a presentation and everybody has the camera off, you're not receiving any feedback. There's silence as you're delivering it. So you just wonder, right, I'm not getting any visual feedback. Is it landing? Do I need to pause somewhere? Do I need to look at and go over things? So, and Mina, you mentioned earlier on, there's some people in your group, in the cohort, that still don't turn on their webcams. And I think that's so important to be able to build, and going on to the next topic, which we'll do shortly, about building relationships and being able to see the communication and be able to be getting the message across, confirmation, like nodding of heads I can see, and that's just, agreement, and that's great. And that's what I'd like to see, as well as the verbal and getting the words across. I think, in my view, the visuals are just as important.
And I would say replay and watch and listen to yourself.
Yes.
And cringe.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like I just to work and stuff, I used to go to a comms coach, and that was the first thing she recorded, was just me talking to her. And next time we met, she kind of played it back to me, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, why am I, moving my legs? Why are my hands? Like, what's going on? Why am I rolling my eyes? You get a whole bunch of, and I think people are probably their worst critic. And I think it's always good to kind of listen and watch, because you'll probably pick up a lot of things that you're not even aware of.
Yeah, I said that to Mina after our first LinkedIn live session. Remember, Mina?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
For example, folded hands right now. Oh. Come on.
Yeah.
But
And sorry,
on that note, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue, Steph.
Even just quickly, to our example of how important the sound is, how many times do we wake up in the morning and we're listening to the news? We're not watching it. We have the TV on, but we're going about making breakfast, having our coffee, running our errands in the morning, but we're simply listening to the news. We're not actually watching it. We could have so many YouTube tabs open. Biju's watching dog rescue. I don't know, but we're listening to it in the background. But we're not actually watching it, right? So that just goes to show that we're listening to the information. We're not always watching it either. And if you're watching a movie, you're critical of both. But if it's too loud, you automatically cringe. But if it's a little dark, you'll squint your eyes, but you'll still watch it. You may turn the channel, but it's more if it's, oh my goodness, that commercial is so loud, you'll just automatically switch the channel.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I gotta say, that's revelation for me today.
Yeah, and what I was going to add.
Maybe it's not the video. Maybe we're just making a big deal about the video. Maybe it's really not the video. It's because maybe we're not able to say, and we really don't know what we want to say, that makes us more conscious about the fact that we're maybe exposed in a different way. But if you just kind of know that story, maybe video just doesn't make a difference. I don't know. Sorry, Sally, go ahead.
And I love that Biju was in my masterclass about this exact topic, because I think it's important to first practice on paper, have it written down, know it, and the more you recite it, you hear yourself, you become more comfortable, you present it now on a visual platform, you're more comfortable seeing yourself say it, you've now written it down, heard yourself, seen it 10 times doing it, you're more comfortable, and it becomes easier for you. So, you know, as I share in the masterclass, start at the beginning. If you're just now writing it for the first time, then that's okay. You know, you're going to walk through practicing it, reciting it. You know, as we go through our job journey and we're advancing in our careers, that story may change as well and evolve over time. So we have to revisit that. But definitely, yeah, like the final step I would say is to be able to say it to other people in person when you're in an interview, which is visual. So again, we do have to eventually say it on video in person at some time, but definitely that's not just positive thinking, that's putting it into action, right, Biju?
Absolutely. Sally, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying, over time, I've noticed some people, they may do this subconsciously or just, intentionally. They use their background and certain visual cues as conversation starters. Like if you're having an interview or a meeting, you may notice something on that person's background. It's a picture on the wall, a degree, maybe the same university you went to, maybe an artifact from your travel. And that's, it's just an icebreaker, right? It gets conversation started. I think that's pretty interesting. And I think going into Lonnie's point about relationship building, that's something you can use to, project interest in something or to convey something about yourself, right? Or maybe you won golf trophies, I don't know. I just think it's interesting how you can use that background and this medium to convey more about your personality as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next talk because, again, in this session, I didn't start with, hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm talking about how to be more confident in video interviews. I started with the story about Biju and alluding it to what Sayali and Lonnie said. So, I mean, anything you can do to relate and connect with your audience and be friendly right off the bat is definitely a bonus and an add. Yep.
Lonnie, no comments? You were so quiet. You were letting the ladies talk?
No, I'm agreeing. I mean, I don't think I need to say anything more to add to that part of the conversation.
And you do a lot of interviews, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about?
I have done a lot of interviews. I think at the moment we're on a recruitment freeze, so that's challenging. But the common strands, the issues that we have, what not to do interviews, some of the basic stuff happen on a recurring basis. I think, Biju, I remember you speaking a while back around, once somebody's in front of you, you've already gone through, or the process has already taken that individual through the technical aspects of the role, right? So you're already confident that on paper, they're fit for the role, technically speaking. And you might ask a few questions, or you will ask a few questions around the technical aspects, but it's more around the fit. How will they fit? How do I engage? Am I going to be able to work with this person? Is my team going to be able to work with the individual, and the other way around? So that's what I think I look for in trying to be able to find the right person to fit into a role that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think for me, I want an engaging interview. I just don't want to sit and ask questions and somebody responds. It's like, oh, geez, it's almost like pulling teeth, right? I want somebody to say, did I answer that enough? Is there anything else you want? Do you want me to clarify anything? Or engage in the conversation like you were just engaging in a conversation in a professional way. And right, just because otherwise, if you hear 2 taps on the table for me, then the interview's over. That's not a secret code. We're just tech is done. Next. We're just
Guys will be interviewing with Biju at any point. Taps are not good.
No, it's we're all it's not because now somebody's traveled, you have a conversation, but pretty much in the first 15, 20 minutes.
But look, Biju, that point's quite an interesting one because reading body language is quite important as well as the interviewee. When I was interviewing, I was looking at the body language of the person interviewing me. So if they did cross their arms or they were tapping the pen, you know that you've either talked too much or it's going off the point. So you need to bring it back on. So you need to be self-aware and aware of the situation to then adapt to it. So, and the most effective conversation, then it really is about having a conversation during the interview rather than being formulaic.
That's right. And there's some roles where we give these case studies and stuff, and it's not because we know the answer. Actually, we don't even care about the answer. We don't even care if the answer is right or wrong. We just want an hour and a half of just conversation, just to get thinking and understanding what people think, like how they engage in a conversation, if they're kind of challenged, like, you know, how do they react to it? How do they bring conversation back? It just depends on the role, right? So a lot of times, I think you can overthink that versus just showing up, because if I give you a case study today and interviews tomorrow, I'm not expecting you to decode and decipher the whole thing overnight. Right? I'm just not, right? So engaging conversation is good.
And can you trust them when you're not in the room to do the task and perform the role, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've talked so much about the visual aspect, but I'd like to take us into our next topic, which is about building and nurturing relationships. So do you feel that, and let's talk about the visual appearance. Do you feel that these video sessions and video calls build those relationships? And then we can go into how to really build relationships. So let's say I'm having an interview with you, Amdadur, and we have a great conversation. How do I know if I'm really connecting with you, if I'm building anything with you, if I'm engaging with you?
Okay, so over the video calling, for me, it would be more around what we just talked about, around how comfortable you feel with the individual. How does a conversation flow? So from start to end, you have a nice conversation. Everything flows into the next part of the conversation. There isn't any kind of awkward silences or odd moments, or even it ending abruptly or something like this. I think that's a great indication. By the time you get to the end of your hour or hour and a half, whatever the time limit is, you kind of think to yourself, oh, wow, that's gone by really quickly. I've had an engaging conversation. I've really liked the person because the way they handled themselves, it all flowed. They made sense. You know, we had a bit of, maybe a bit of humor into it as well, just to lighten the mood. And I think that for me kind of delivers how you can then go away and think, actually, I can work with that individual. I had a good conversation, it flowed, and so forth. So that's one of the ways I look at it. And yeah, to a point, you would want to make sure that the person is technically competent and all that sort of good stuff. But I think being able to come away feeling, I've got a good feeling about this individual, I think there will be a great fit to the team and to the wider organization.
Very good. Anybody else has any thoughts about how to build this kind of relationship through this visual presence and further?
Well, after the first 5 minutes now, that Stephanie's, you know, I think it's the conversation that matters. I agree. Like, yeah, you know, I think it's a new medium, perhaps, right? But maybe that's just a mental block we have. But you can be in any medium and just have a bad conversation. So yeah, you want to connect with people, relate to them, have some common stories, understand background and things like that. Sure, I don't think those rules change. I think this video thing is just, I think I've been overthinking this now. I don't think the rules have changed at all.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, you know, to your point, is sometimes somebody picking up the phone. I've had a couple of instances where people have picked up the phone and just gone straight into it. Yeah. And you're going to go, oh, hold on a minute. Let's just wind it back a little bit. Let's just kind of get the context. Don't assume, and let's just be comfortable, get into a conversational way of going about it. So you're right. I think the tactics, whether you're doing it in person, over the phone, video, the basics, the fundamentals should still apply. It's just getting comfortable with that medium. You're right.
Yeah, if anything, I think this medium makes it easier and maybe faster for you to connect with people you would have never connected with. Ever.
Correct.
Just because you would never be there in person.
I like that point. And, you know, a visual medium like this will only amplify if you're not prepared. It will become more obvious. So that's the challenge of it. The opportunity behind it is that you now get to have a visual conversation with someone, perhaps not even just a job situation, but connecting over LinkedIn or different portals where you can now, it's now normal to have these Zoom conversations or to have these virtual conversations where people are now more open and have more time to have those virtual coffees or whatever. So if used wisely and tactfully, it's the greatest opportunity to connect with people. But in the job market, it's also the greatest opportunity to show that you're not prepared as well if you don't take the time. Invest and be prepared to be watched only by what's in the frame.
I also feel people aren't always comfortable in this medium for small talk. Like you go into someone's office, like Lani mentioned, right? It's just not easy. People turn on their camera and they get straight to it. Whereas usually you walk into someone's office, hey, how was your weekend? Did you watch the game last night? I think that comes to people way easier, or maybe it was just something they were used to. And this still seems foreign. This still seems new to kind of ease into that conversation and not just get directly to the point. So I think people still need some getting used to in that sense.
Now I have to say, Sayali, that sun is giving you a halo effect right now. It's like completely. You'll have to rewatch the video. You'll see it's like completely like it's like shadow.
Yeah. Maybe I should do something.
We listened to everything Sayali said, but the visual was the halos distracting.
Yikes. Okay, hold on.
Well, I have to add over here. Usually the glow comes from Sina. She's not here today, so Sally's making sure that that's happening.
Okay, is this better?
See, it's gone now.
Awesome. I'm subbing. I was subbing for Sina.
Sina, we lost the glow. See, it's all yours. All right. So let's go back now again. So I've connected with you. Biju, let's say that you are a Destination CEO mentor. I've connected with you. So we have our conversation, our first conversation, and I want to ask you for a job referral. Is that okay?
Oh, I don't know what the first conversation is about. Like, I don't
How
know
are
enough.
you?
Right? I've had, like, truth be told, I've had people on LinkedIn message me saying that, hey, we connected 3 years ago. I've just applied to Enbridge. I've used you as a reference. By the way, that's the first conversation we've ever had.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Because if somebody asked you who you are, I wouldn't even know, right? And that is like, HR would like just cross you out because I would say, I don't know what that is, right? So I think you should build connections and relationships with people because you find them important in your life or in your context of what you want to do, not so much of, job and other things. It's just byproduct of whatever. But I think if you do with that intent, I think you'll never build strong bonds. Right? I don't think that'll ever happen.
Yeah.
Right?
So Lonnie, this is your topic, building and nurturing relationships. Let's start. If you can give us, like a couple of tips. If I'm looking at your profile and oh my God, you're a director at BMO and I really need to connect with you. You're also a second connection of mine. And that's literally how we kind of got connected. Natalia introduced us. And then next thing you know, I'm like, Lonnie, please come to our event. And then you were speaking and even without knowing you're part of Destination CEO completely. But it almost happened organically, right?
It did.
And
yeah,
it was like love at first sight. But going back, all right, Mrs. Lonnie, I'm not hitting on him, but how can somebody really connect and build that?
Yeah. I think here, like we've all been there. That's the first thing I want to say is that we've all been in the situation where we've had to start somewhere around building a network and then building relationships and actually strengthening those relationships. And then how do you maintain that? So I think one of the key things is what people make strong connections from my experience is around getting somebody to like you, right? You connect on a common ground. You have something in common. So they want to be around you. They want to have a chat about something that you're both interested in. That's what kind of leads you down to building strong relationships. And I think you can't get there, and you won't get there over 1, 2, or 3 conversations. It just doesn't happen. Okay, it probably happens, but it probably happens in very rare instances. There's experiences that I've gone through in my lifetime where I've had to meet people 6 or 7 times. A client back in the UK, and he was a client of mine. First 3, 4 times is very business discussions. So it's a structured meeting. But actually, as time progressed, we got to connect on a number of different things, common grounds, sports, whatever it is. And now I'm still connected, even though he's no longer a client, I'm no longer part of that organization. We are friends. I went to his wedding and everything else. And it's just one of those things. He was a very serious individual, got on really well with him, and we just connected on a personal level. And I think what we've got to do is, with those opportunities, is be able to, and there's a book, I'll refer to this, and this is one of the first tips, really. There is a book out there, and it's by Dale Carnegie. You may have heard of it, How to Make Friends and Influence People. I think he published it back in the 30s, and lots of the principles that are in that book hold true today. Absolutely does. And I think, simple things like remembering somebody's name. When you're meeting them at a conference, great, get some information, remember them for something. Not only remembering the name, but actually remembering when you're having a conversation. One of the things I do is like the small talk element. Sometimes people suffer a bit around, well, where do I start? Small talk. So just be comfortable talking about weather, talking about how you got there, but make it interesting. If you're standing there in a conference room, when we get back to it, hopefully, and you don't know an individual, the way I approach it is not what do you do for a living? That's boring. People, if they're out in a conference or if they're out in a social event, they don't really want to talk about work. So the way I position it is to say, how do you keep busy? It's a very open question. And if they want to talk about work, fine. Look, they've just introduced that topic, so you can talk about work. But what I'm saying here is that you've given an open-ended question, and they've talked about something. And they may talk about a passion. They may talk about an interest. And then you can pick up on that. And if that's something that you're interested to, there's a hook. So whether you meet them next time or whether you continue the conversation, you can go down a different angle to build a common ground to talk about. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment. I don't know if that's an example where others on that panel have gone through and just gone, wow, yeah, you know what, that resonates with me.
It does. I think the bottom line is it takes time. I think with some people you connect faster. With some people it just takes time. And I think the intention of the connection is important, because that intention translates to your behavior and kind of what you talk about, what you don't. So I think that's important. I think you're going to connect with somebody, then you should just be clear on why it is. And maybe it's nothing, which is okay. You just want to get to know people. That's fine. But I think if that intention isn't clear, or it's for some objective that maybe is beneficial to you, then I think you will act in such a way to get to that objective, which will probably just take you off course and you'll burn and crash somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
It's like the guy who said, hey, I'm just letting you know I used you as a reference. I'm like, well, thanks for letting me know. I just don't think that's a good idea. Right?
Absolutely. And sometimes, go on, Mina.
I was just saying that it also puts you in an awkward spot. Like, what are you supposed to say when somebody says, I'll put you as my reference? I don't know you. Like,
no,
what was I supposed to say?
That's a bad idea, because if HR called me, I wouldn't know who you are. So take it out, just for your own sanity, because I'll say I don't know who you are and they'll just block you forever. So don't do that. It's not good, right? And I don't know others, I'm sure, gone through this.
And it's interesting, there was to one of your points there, Biju, around you may have an objective and your intention of trying to connect and build that relationship. And absolutely, there's a different way of approaching those conversations and how you get the most out of those relationships. And it takes time and it builds up over time. I had a coffee chat with somebody with no agenda. This individual was living in my building apartment. And we were similar backgrounds in terms of he came from Los Angeles and I was from the UK. And we just went for a coffee. We just said, hey, let's connect, let's have a coffee. That coffee meeting lasted 4 hours. The longest coffee meeting I've ever had. But we connected on a really good level. You know, we had common ground, the conversation flowed, and there was just no agenda. But actually, since then, we've been out for a meal together, played a round of golf, actually 3 rounds of golf together. And, he's given me contacts elsewhere where I've said, I've got this challenge over here. And he's gone, go and speak to this individual over here because he may be able to help you. And I've got another call with this individual tomorrow morning. So it's just natural. Sometimes it's just about, well, actually you're going with no intention, no kind of objective, but building that relationship. And they get so comfortable. Somebody says, you know what, I really like this guy, or I'm comfortable with this individual and he's got a need. Let me put him in contact with somebody else that I know. So sometimes that kind of that works as well.
Sally, what about you? You get like new people every day sending you stuff. Like, like how do you?
So it's very interesting, right? To your point, everyone has different approach, the ways how they approach. Some are very direct, like the guy who used Biju as a reference. Hey, I saw this job, or hey, looking for a job here. Can you help? And some, yes, are more organic, authentic. And yeah, I think what resonates with me is if you can have something that gets the attention, right? Referencing my name, firstly, that's huge. But otherwise, just something simple. Hey, saw your background. I'm from Mumbai too. Or, this is where I studied as well. I see you're recruiting on this opportunity. Can we chat? And yes, I do get a large volume, so it's tough to respond to everybody, but something like this is mostly going to get my attention, right? If I can't help the person directly, I'll at least try and get on the conversation with them to see if I can introduce them to Destination CEO or someone else in my network whom I could connect them with to have that conversation. And like Lonnie said, sometimes it's just organic, there's no agenda, it's just networking, or sometimes it's just some issue they're looking for help with, or just a sounding board, to use someone as a sounding board. So yeah, I get all sorts, like you said, Biju. But yeah, everyone has their own style, and I think even timing's interesting too. Sometimes it just moves fast, rapidly. Sometimes it takes a matter of time for the relationship to evolve. So yeah, it's case by case.
And that's that's a fair point. If someone's reaching out to you, Sayali, on LinkedIn, but they don't even, if they can't show that connection or there's some kind of thing hook, then the chances of you responding, especially if the volume is quite high, is going to be reduced, right? Mm-hmm. So when we connected, you mentioned Natalia. So I know Natalia, and automatically I was like, right, yeah, I'll pick up the phone, I'll speak to them, I'll go out. So there's a connection already. Somebody that you've already had a good engagement with, they've just recommended you to one of their network members, then it always helps. And I think when people reach out to me via LinkedIn and they provide a little personal message telling me how they kind of connected with me, is always a great thing. And that's always stepping onto the right way to build the relationships, because you're starting off on the right foot rather than a random just connect. I think, yeah, you can do something to help yourself. You have to meet them halfway, right?
Yeah. And sometimes, continue.
No, go for it. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, and that's the start. You talked about the first connection request, and then it just builds from there, right? I usually just send out mailers for Happy Canada Day, Happy Thanksgiving. I use them as well. I always tell people, use the festivals that we have, right? To increase your touch points. People like that. People love receiving holiday mailers.
And
So
there's always
both
an
are-
international day for something, isn't there?
That's right.
Absolutely. So yeah, something like that would be appreciated, right? If you discover common interest around along the lines, I have people, we swap hiking trails, like, oh, where did you go this weekend? So again, that's how a connection builds, right? So I just find it's interesting to discover avenues that you connect on and you can share valuable information on, interesting information on.
And it's okay if you reach out to somebody or actually you're having a conversation on the phone or a video call and you don't hit it off, you know what? Fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work out, and you've got to be okay with that, because if you want to build a long-term nurture a good, strong relationship, you've got to be on a good level, good wavelength. So you're in the same vibe and you get each other. And if you're trying to force that relationship because you think, actually, this is the person that's going to help me get into this role, into this organization, but you've not hit it off, it's not meant to be. Walk away. There's another avenue. Use your energies elsewhere where you'll connect better with, So I think, I've had examples in the past, and I'm sure we've had it where we've tried to connect with somebody and they've just gone, not interested. You just move on.
I have 30% of my connections who are people that I just admire. And I've just sent a message saying, I really love what you're doing. And I wanted to say hi. That's all. There is no agenda over there. And it's just plain appreciation for the things that they're doing or they're getting. There doesn't have to have an agenda. But I do want to talk. We do have last 4 minutes, and we have a big event coming up on the weekend. But before we go there, let's say I am a job seeker, because that's what everybody is struggling with. They're a job seeker. They've been hearing all over internet, all the coaches, developers, everybody's saying, oh, you need to make connections. You need to make connections. You need to ask connections to refer you internally. And in fact, even I say that, right? But what are maybe one tip each of you can give on how we can make that connection with the purpose that we would like this person to refer us internally within their organization? So.
Yeah, I think for me, the one tip would be build a bridge, don't burn it. Right off that first interaction. So we're trying to build bridge, as we were talking, as Sayali was mentioning, we're trying to build a relationship. What are some commonalities we said, as Lonnie mentioned, but, in our connection, we want to say, oh, I'm really interested in the company you work for. I'm really interested in the title that you have. I'm really interested in your experience. I'm really interested in the article you wrote on LinkedIn. I really like the pictures that you took for X, Y, and Z. You want to connect on another level other than I see you're hiring for a job, because, as Sayali mentioned, and Mina, you get these like people in your inbox asking you for things all the time. Let's work on building a bridge, right? The person who is in our inbox who says, I'm really interested in your background. I see you do this. You posted about this. It resonated with me. We're more likely to engage in that conversation than someone who just wants something from us. As we've mentioned, it's all about having a conversation in a job interview. We want to treat the inbox in the same way on social media and in networking. Let's use that as an opportunity to build a bridge at that point. Let's not use it as an opportunity to cringe when Biju says someone used him as a reference and he had no idea, right? That's automatically burning a bridge, right? Instead of building a connection, instead of saying, hi, Biju, I'm applying to a position within Bridge. I know you work there. Would you have some more information about the role? Do you know the hiring manager? Can we have a conversation? Do you know the team? Do you know the role? So many touch points that could have been hit there. And I'm sure, knowing Biju, he would be happy to have that conversation. But instead it was, proactively kind of burning a bridge, right? So my one piece of advice would be work on building the bridge. Sometimes it may be the long game. Sometimes there might be short-term results, and it might be a job opportunity right now. But work on bridging that connection so that in the long term, it's not just maybe a job now, but it's a job later, and it's a connection and a conversation in building your network as well.
Nice.
Yeah, so I agree. The one I would say is, build it, then make it stronger. Nice. Like invest the time that it takes. And I don't think it has to be, that's why a lot of times it's not the number of followers, it's the people that really you care about. You can have 1,000 followers, 1 million followers, but there's probably only about 100 that actually probably engage with you on a regular basis, only because that's kind of how you build it, right? So I think it's better to be more surgical about, kind of your board of directors and those people, and invest time in that versus get caught up in some vanity metrics that says, well, if I just have 10,000 followers, my life will be better. It won't, because they don't know you any different than me or anybody else, right? So that's what I would say.
I would even suggest refrain from using the word referral, refer in your very first outreach. It's just something about it that feels like an obligation. Sorry, there's just something about it that feels like an obligation. People may be put off. And if someone would be happy to engage in a conversation, it's just that one word that might put them off. You know what I mean? So maybe, like Stephanie said, just be honest in your approach, reference something about them. I'm really interested in this. Can we have a conversation? I'd love to grab 10 minutes of your time. They know you're looking for a job and that's what you're leading towards, but that's okay. They'll appreciate the effort that you're making, right? They'll appreciate the approach and be more than happy to have that conversation rather than if you flat out come and ask for a referral. So maybe have that engagement first. They'll say maybe they're busy, they don't have time. Then you can sort of build a follow-up to that, but at least try and get them to connect with you first, right? In any way, shape, or form, then build up to that eventual connection and referral.
Yeah, I agree with all of the wise advice that's been given here, and I think it is wise because trying to refer or using that phrase, Sayali, when somebody's on having the very first conversation and say, "Now can you refer me?" It's like, well, I hardly know you, So it's about building that trust. It's about building that relationship. So to be able to feel for yourself, to be able to go, yes, I can. This is my reputation. If I'm putting somebody forward, I need to be comfortable. So my advice and my tip to answer your question, Lena, was really about how you can get people to refer you. I suppose it's people remember how you make them feel, right? In any conversations and the discussions that you're having. And one of Dale Carnegie's tips and principles that he brings out in his book is about lavishing praise. So yes, sometimes, and you've got to be genuine about it, right? When you're talking to individuals, you're having conversations, lavish praise. If they've issued an article that you thought was fantastic, absolutely, and you found it fantastic, lavish praise on that. Don't hold back. Sometimes as human beings, we don't do enough of that. And I think when you do something like that, people remember, it sticks in your mind. And I've had conversations, great conversations, with some of your participants, Lena. And, the reason why I remember them is it's something that they remembered or they followed up and they've been grateful, and it's showed energy and passion that makes me feel happy. And I thought, well, okay, that's a good engagement. That's a great conversation. And I feel that I would be very happy without them even asking to refer them to a role if that came up in my area. So I think that's what I would say in terms of make sure you leave people, people like the way you make them feel. So just kind of think about that as you go along, and the other stuff will come naturally, and they'll think positively and think, right, I should, either if I can't help them here, let me just connect them with somebody else that potentially could help them and move them along towards their objective.
Yeah. On that note, Lonnie, I would like to add, when you say referral, it means that you're giving them your stamp of approval, right? And sometimes that may not work out timing-wise, but if you've made enough of an impression, even in your first conversation or your LinkedIn message, if you are professional, authentic, sometimes people will just connect you with their HR or whoever and say, hey, I don't know this person, right? So they don't feel obligated and they won't be blamed if this blows up, but they'll be comfortable. You've made enough of an impression to say, hey, I don't know this person, connected with them on LinkedIn, I really liked what they said, here's their profile. Correct. So they're not referring you, quote unquote, but you are, in front of HR or the hiring manager, which is exactly where you want it to be, right? So again, sometimes timing may not work out for them to wholeheartedly recommend or refer you, but if you've made enough of an impression, they would be happy to at least pass on the message, right? Or pass on your profile to the right people.
Agreed. Yep.
And on that note, we have gone over time. It's 7:04. Thank you so much, everybody. And I wanted to say that the hook that we all have here is Destination CEO. Each and every single one of us is passionate about giving back, is passionate about the mission and vision of Destination CEO. So without further ado, if you are interested in learning more about Destination CEO and want to get involved with our program, with our mentors, we have a bunch of events coming up every single day. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am hosting an orientation about Destination CEO. And I'm going to tell you everything about it if you join us. So I'm going to put the link in this in the comment section. If you're interested to learn more and get involved with Destination CEO, please join us for the orientation tomorrow. And mentors, thank you so much for this wonderful session. Thank you all for joining in.